would expect our answers to be short, sharp, and punchy. Over to you, Honorable Minister.
Thank you, Nancy. Good morning, Your Excellency. Please allow me to rest on the very well adumbrated protocols in the interest of time. So the Renewed Hope 8-point agenda has item number 7 as accelerating non-oil exports. And this works across a number of pillar critical ministries, of which the Federal Ministry of Industry, Trade and Investment serves as an enabler and facilitator. Now, when you take trade policy, we've had to go back and look at the foundations of our trade relationships. We've identified new friends. We've also engaged strategically with old friends. The Vice Chair alluded to the headwinds across the world that we've witnessed in 2025. At the beginning of the year, the ministry released an outlook document stating our priorities for the year, from investment mobilization to our trade policy review to industrial policy, and of course, driving exports diversification. One of the pillars that I'll rest on this morning is our use of the AFCFTA as a strategic driver for rebalancing our non-oil exports. In Q1, the central bank released that year-on-year, 24% of exports from Nigeria to the rest of Africa had increased by 24% year-on-year. Now, what we've focused on is making sure that in a pragmatic way, we coordinate all that has been going on in Nigeria over the last 5 years and AFCFTA. And we did that in a number of critical ways. The first thing was to make sure that we released the 5-year review of AFCFTA implementation. It's mandated under the agreement, but Nigeria was the first country to implement that audit and to publicly release. Announced in January that we would do it, and in April we did that, and it's publicly available. We also initiated a committee, a coordination committee, a central coordination committee for AFCFTA to make sure that all stakeholders in the country know which direction and the implementation roadmap is clear. And that was inaugurated in Q2. I chair that committee, and we started our roadmaps. Now, some of the practical steps, I know that we're pressed for time, that we've taken is that, first of all, we submitted our schedule of tariffs to the AFCFTA Secretariat. We also indicated our interest in being digital trade co-champion, and that was announced in February at AU, with Mr. President being commended as digital trade champion for the AU. We also engaged in supporting private sector practically. We negotiated with the support of UNDP, we negotiated with Uganda Air, an air cargo corridor, where we identified 13 Southern and Eastern African countries that Nigerian businesses would trade with. This is in the area of goods. And we also released trade intelligence toolkit for them to know. We knew that apparel, light manufacturing, cosmetics were in high demand in those countries. So the air cargo corridor with Uganda Air facilitates trade, and that trade commenced. We also did a digital trade survey for our tech ecosystem around April, and we found out that our tech businesses want to expand to 5 key countries: Ghana, Kenya, Rwanda, Egypt, and South Africa. And just last week, on Thursday and Friday, we invited the regulators of those countries to a roundtable with our regulators to have a sandbox and determine what it would take for our businesses to extend into that ecosystem. And then the businesses joined us on Friday. So those are some of the tangible, critical ways that we're supporting businesses to leverage on AFCFTA. We're taking policy, trade policy, of which we're in several negotiations with countries that are now interested in investing in Nigeria, like the Gulf. We're negotiating with a couple of countries in the Gulf. We've been to Brazil. I move now on to investment attraction and how that facilitates. The last thing I'll add is that we've been using incentives in areas such as our free zones, revamping that space and making sure that businesses are aware, and that leads into the tax infrastructure architecture that has been revamped, and just tidying up the whole policy space and then going practically into implementation steps.
Okay, Minister, let me just stay with you for 1 minute, and I would appreciate if you can answer this question quickly. You talked about the freight with Uganda Air. We all know that freight costs by air is expensive. If I push further, we're having port congestions, fragmented agencies, rejected exports, still remain in national trauma in the country. How do you intend to tackle this deeply rooted institutional and standard challenges while also embedding trade, like I mentioned before, as a lever, not as an afterthought in the 2026 to 2030 development agenda. Honorable Minister, quickly.
Trade has been prioritized by this administration. I use the air cargo corridor as one example. Businesses have been using air freight because of trade facilitation issues. And so that cost was reduced by 50 to 75% for the businesses. In areas of trade facilitation through the traditional routes on land and sea, we've worked significantly on a national single window that will be coming live in Q1 of 2026. And that is that we've also worked with the customs. Our customs will be chairing or hosting all the customs agencies on the 19th of November. And what this means is taking from paper, from policy, into working with human beings to make sure that we give life to the AFCFTA and we really help to tackle those problems. So all the work that I'm talking about, I'm just giving some key examples of the practical work that has been going on in the last 10 to 11 months.
All right, thank you very much, Honorable Minister. But policy, we all know, is half of the story. The other half is how it plays out in boardrooms and factories, and that is of the private sector. Mr. Lusaya, let me come back to you. I know from your presentations you did talk about some, while you were talking. But from where you sit, really, what are the most urgent reforms that the government must deliver now to unlock that competitiveness? And beyond reforms, how can private capital as well as the Nigerian industry take ownership of shifting export from raw commodities into value-added products that can truly compete on the after?
Sorry, thank you very much. I'll take the second one first because that's a bit easier. Look, I think if we look at worldwide experiences, Turkey turned itself into a large export-based economy by driving domestic production into excess. And what did it do? It created significant infrastructure, supported the economy with significant power. That meant that domestically the cost of production was much lower than anywhere else in the world. Today, our difficulty from purely manufacturing or an industrialization point is our cost to produce is too high compared to everywhere else in the world. And if we talk about the reforms, you can't run away from infrastructure and power being available, because without those, it's a difficult enough basis for competition. So those two we need to address as a nation, because then we become more competitive. There is obviously the need for us to also then add local production or significant growth in local production. But the other things that government need to look at, and they're looking at them now, which is good, are levies and the way customs operate. Because those are bottlenecks even today to anyone who wants to do any export. The processes and the procedures that you have to go through, whether it's through the number of points that you have to be checked at or the difficulty just in getting documentation for exports to be able to occur. Another aspect that government needs to look at, which would be from a reform point of view, and this is a bit regulatory, is we need to be a lot more sincere and earnest in getting quality control in place. The ability for our exports to sell in the worldwide market will be dependent on the quality of the exports that we send out. And every time we send poor quality exports out, we turn our ability to export back, because then those countries become even more lukewarm to the ability to buy our goods and services. And we need to be very, very sincere and push hard for quality control to be in place. If we get those simple reforms in place, then it becomes easier for us to become more competitive in the marketplace. And we should do that now using the Continental Free Trade Agreement as a great basis and starting point.
Thank you very much, Mr. Lusaya. Now let's turn to global development and policy perspective, and Dr. Verghese. The World Bank has been closely tracking the interplay between trade, productivity and structural transformation across emerging economies, from your experience in Europe, Central Asia, as well as East Asia. What macroeconomic and institutional reforms must Nigeria prioritize now and 2030 to position itself within, after, and a reconfiguring global trade system? I'm asking this question intentionally because, of course, your experience, having worked in several countries. Over to you, Dr. Verghese.
Thank you very much, Nancy. The starting point, I think, is what several of the speakers have acknowledged, which is the very important and critical reforms that were implemented 2 years ago. It's hard to overstate how important that was to set the framework that Nigeria is now in a position to take advantage of. And so the question is, what next to consolidate these reforms and to get the benefits from it? In our view, the first priority is to bring inflation down so that people can start feeling the benefits of these reforms to a greater extent. This will be important also to reduce inflation rates, interest rates, which will be important for businesses to continue moving forward. So I say this also as a preview to our Nigeria Economic Update, which will be presented on Wednesday, with the presence of our key ministers, which will cover exactly this topic. Once you can do that, then the priority shifts to the range of actions that several of the speakers have made in their very useful speeches, very important speeches. At the World Bank, we're starting a transition where we used to focus on growth as the means of people, benefits coming to people, to also focusing on jobs. And this is partly driven by recent experience in South Asia, where I'm from, where we have seen 2 decades of very fast growth in countries like India and Bangladesh, and yet jobs have not kept up with that. I'll come back to why this might be later, but you can see what happened in places like Bangladesh, in Pakistan, in Sri Lanka, countries that were quite successful in many respects, except in creating enough jobs that then led to quite wide unrest. So we are increasingly suggesting a focus on jobs. Now, this might not be that different from the focus on growth, except in a few key areas. You start with an economic environment that's conducive to private sector development. Several speakers have made this point. I think several of the points that the minister made will address this. The opening up to the African Free Trade Agreement will support this. But there is space for bold action in this area. The second has also been mentioned, which is investments in people and in infrastructure. And here I just want to emphasize how big the gap for Nigeria is, that the investments needed are massive, and to be able to achieve anything like the targets of a $1 trillion economy, really bold action will be needed here, and probably starting on 2 fronts. One is even more actions on public revenue mobilization that will allow the government to finance the investments in people. Given the size of the needs for the investments in infrastructure, we would suggest an increasing focus on private capital mobilization, with the role of the public in enabling that, in de-risking, in providing seed capital that will allow the private sector to come in and expand. And finally, a strategic support to key sectors that actually will support job creation. Some sectors are capital intensive and won't create many jobs, but if you do care about job creation, then you need to identify the sectors that will create jobs and support those in a strategic way. Agribusiness in Nigeria comes to mind very easily, and there are several others that would make the case. The kind of support is also important.
All right, we have Matthew Vargas, the country director, World Bank Group there, speaking at the Nigerian Economic Summit, the 31st Nigerian Economic Summit going down in Abuja at the moment. Of course, our correspondent is on ground. Sumaya will be speaking with her in just a moment on Business Edge. But the focus, it seems we have her on right now. Sumaya, good morning to you. Can you give us a picture of what is going on ground? It's obviously day one of the Nigerian Economic Summit, the 31st.
Good morning, Perpetua. I will tell you that here is really packed. Interesting conversation has been going on, and right behind me on the podium is a panel talking about how Nigeria's trade, is being navigated globally. And so this is a very in-depth conversation. So far, one of the major concern is, things that are hindering this $1 billion economy target that Nigeria has placed, saying that they want to get, there by 2030. But then, according to the pointers that was made by the chairman of the NESG and also by the minister of the budget, Aliko Dangote, was the same thing about interest, personal interest, elite taking over, and also, concerns about political tensions affecting the growth. So far, I would say conversation has been really deep. A lot has been covered, and it is still ongoing and being unraveled. But then everyone seemed to be really in-depth, about the concern, and the goal is one, which is Nigeria must get to, the target of the $1 trillion economy by 2030.
Ambitious, Sumaya. Thank you for that insight. I'm Joanna. So give us a picture of what to expect ahead in the coming days at the Nigerian Economic Summit.
Joanna, I would say your voice, it's amazing. But yes, right now I seem to be, interrupting a bit of people behind here because they're missing out on the panel. But then yes, a lot is being expected. There is some talk about, the reform imperative, which is the theme. There is also about building a prosperous Nigeria, inclusive, talking about inclusivity by 2030. So there is going to be a lot of conversation on that one. And also, we're talking about unlocking investment. So far, we've been having a deep dive into that, how we can get potential, potential investors into the country, because so far we've been having, a bit of blockage and slow investment in terms of foreign investment in the country. So that's another major concern. Also, we have about driving infrastructure. There's be institutional strengthening and also industrialization-led growth. So these are the vast discussion that would be, that expected to be talked about, talking from today until Wednesday, and hopefully by the end of the day, it would be more than a conversation, because I heard a bit of here and there from people saying that last year's, summit, there was a lot of discussion, but nothing was really achieved. So they're hoping that this year it's going to be achieved. We still have just 4 years, basically for us to get to that 2030. That's about 15% GDP growth, which so far we're having just about less than 1% to 2% growth. So there seems to be a lot of work done, and we're hoping the conversations here will navigate us, at the end of this summit towards achieving that.
Abubakar, our correspondent, live in Abuja at the 31st Nigerian Economic Summit. We'll continue to bring you more details on that, but for now, we are diving into Business Edge. Stay with us.
Alhaji Idi Abubakar Atiku Bagudu. I would like to weaponize him and the Honorable Minister of Finance and Coordinating Minister of the Economy, Mr. Wale Edun, to recognize and appreciate all my colleagues. There are too numerous for me to go through the list of the Federal Executive Council. Special advisors to the President, my brother, my friend, His Royal Highness, the Emir of Kano, Alhaji Dr. Muhammad Sanusi II, the Chairman, Nigerian Economic Summit Group, Mr. Olani Yusuf, heads of government agencies and parastatals, members of the diplomatic corps, captains of industry, esteemed panelists, members of the fourth estate of the Rim, honored guests, distinguished ladies and gentlemen. Our faith in our economies is the magic wand of our reforms. There is no single decision we have taken that is not guided by the pursuit of balance between economic logic and public expectation. Every reform we have introduced has emerged from deep reflection and the courage to act in the interest of the nation. We owe our specialists and stakeholders in economics and public policy a debt of gratitude for staying with us through turbulent tides, for providing insights, for offering criticisms, and for reminding us that our collective goal is not comfort in divergence, but progress in convergence. Whatever our differences, we are bound by the same destination, the duty we owe our people. That is why I'm honored to share the glory of this day with you. The theme of this summit, Building a Prosperous and Inclusive Nigeria by 2030, breathes life into our development agenda. For a nation as abundantly endowed as ours, with immense natural resources and a population blessed with skills and ambition, our greatest asset lies in planning for the future. We are aware of the obstacles before us. We are aware of our economic inequality, insecurity, and infrastructural deficits. But we must also acknowledge that there is no shortcut out of this dilemma. Insecurity and infrastructural deficits. But we must also acknowledge that there is no shortcut out of this dilemma. Our task, the task of reform, is to set the course and continue with the changes that will define the Nigeria of tomorrow. Your Excellencies, distinguished ladies and gentlemen, our renewed hope agenda is not just the outcome of consultations with experts and citizens. It was inspired by our determination to move beyond rhetorics and confront the obstacles that have long restrained this nation's vast potential. The bold reforms we have undertaken speak for themselves. You, as experts in wealth creation, are the fairest judges of their impact. Wherever you stand, there is a resounding consensus that our reforms have stabilized our macroeconomic environment, with our economy expanding to $372.8 billion in 2024, up from $309.5 trillion in 2023. Our total revenue collection also rose from 19.9 trillion naira in 2023 to 25.2 trillion naira in 2024. And as of August, it has reached 27.8 trillion naira, surpassing the revenue target of 18.32 trillion naira. These triumphs and projections are guided by the promise we have made to the nation to grow Nigeria's debt service to revenue ratio from 97%, where we met it, to a sustainable level. Aside from the good news that this ratio has now reduced to less than 50%, I am proud to share that this performance in our early days in office inspired Fitch to upgrade Nigeria's sovereign rating to B with a stable outlook, and Moody's to lift our issuer rating to B3 with a stable outlook. Both praise our improved economic foresight and clearer policy direction as their barometers. Your Excellencies, distinguished ladies and gentlemen, the reforms championed by the present administration have begun to yield tangible results across sectors and beyond the GDP growth of 4.23% recorded in September 2025. A number which surpasses projections from multilateral agencies and local think tanks. Non-oil revenues increased by 411% year-on-year in the same month, while the tax to GDP ratio now nudges towards 13.5%, up from barely 7% a few years ago. Our debt to GDP ratio now stands at 38.8%, far below the limit set by the Fiscal Responsibility Act of 60%, and those of ECOWAS and World Bank at 70%. These numbers tell the story of a nation prepared for the president. They represent the promise we made to Nigerians. We came to office fully aware that the secret to a successful federation lies in empowering each federating unit with the resources and autonomy to pursue development peculiar to its needs. This is why we increased the state's monthly allocations, giving them room to fund critical projects and social interventions. Simultaneously, our commitment to redeeming our industrial and infrastructural deficits has enhanced productivity across sectors. We are now producing an average of 1.8 million barrels of oil per day and are working towards achieving 2 million barrels per day by the end of the 2025 fiscal year. As experts in the economy, you know more than the average citizen that the stability in our foreign exchange market is not accidental. It reflects deliberate choices guided by the same economic logic and wisdom that gatherings such as these embody. Along with subsidy removal, these decisions have rescued our public finances, stabilized the economy, and reassured investors at home and abroad. We owe this progress to the sacrifices of Nigerians, whose patience and understanding have been the bedrock of our endurance. To them, I say, the better days we promise are already within sight. Through these reforms, our external reserves have grown to $43 billion as of September 2025. The figure we had when we assumed the mantle of leadership was so frighteningly low that I can't even dare to quote. Our trade balance also improved to 7.46 trillion naira in the second quarter of 2025, up from 5.17 trillion in the first quarter. I admit that this growth has not yet fully translated into enough jobs for our people, but we are closing that gap. We are giving priority to agriculture and solid minerals, two sectors with great potential to create jobs and strengthen our economy. To move faster, we have entered into partnerships with other countries to bring in modern farming equipment, train our farmers, and expand extension services across the nation. Agriculture is the bedrock of our economy. And for us to have enhanced agricultural output, we have to embrace technology. Improved seed is absolutely essential. Fertilization is a sine qua non. Extension services is an ingredient for successful agricultural intervention, and most importantly, better agricultural practices. And we are poised to see that the whole mantra is on increase in yield as lightly enunciated by the vice chairman of the NESG. And we cannot have improved yields without embracing technology, modernity, fertilization, and of course, technology. Not complex technologies where a family of 3 or 4 can farm 2,000, 5,000 hectares, but intermediate technology that also employ labor and drive productivity. And our reforms are deliberately cross-cultural because we understand that diversification is the only pathway to sustainable growth. The contribution of the Ministry of Solid Minerals Development to the Federation account has improved remarkably with the sector, generating 12.58 billion in 2024 through mineral title applications and related fees. This is a sign of the sector's awakening and the result of deliberate reforms aimed at unlocking its full potential. As a people-oriented government, our priority remains restoring hope to the unemployed, the poor, the excluded, and the vulnerable. We have created pathways for young Nigerians to access grants and loans and equity investments of up to $100,000 to scale their enterprises, innovate, and build sustainable livelihoods. We established a 200 billion naira intervention fund to support micro, small, and medium enterprises and manufacturers, helping them overcome structural challenges and enhance competitiveness. Our expansion of digital microloan access has improved financial inclusion, empowering small businesses and stimulating community-level productivity. These efforts underline our commitment to an economy that works for all Nigerians. Your Excellencies, distinguished ladies and gentlemen, the four tax reform acts recently signed into law, the Nigeria Tax Act, the Nigeria Tax Administration Act, the Nigeria Revenue Service Establishment Act, and the Joint Revenue Board Establishment Act, represents a bold recalibration of our fiscal architecture that will boost domestic revenue mobilization, reduce dependence on oil, and simplify compliance. These reforms protect low-income earners, ensure fairness in corporate taxation, and strengthen digital innovation in tax administration. By promoting transparency and coordination among all tiers of government, we are laying the foundation for a fairer and more prosperous Nigeria. To improve connectivity and ease of movement, we are constructing highways, bridges, and rail lines across states, including interstate terminals, with over 440 ongoing road projects covering more than 2,700 kilometers of superhighways nationwide. These investments in infrastructure are the arteries of national prosperity, facilitating commerce and strengthening national unity. The government has also unveiled the renewed Hope Ward-Based Development Program, a people-centered initiative designed to empower citizens at the grassroots. By targeting all 8,809 wards across the 774 local government areas, the program seeks to map local economic activities, human capital, infrastructure, and resource endowment, ensuring no community is left behind. Modeled after successful frameworks in China, India, and Kenya, it represents a bottom-up approach to addressing multidimensional poverty through participatory development. Community leaders, residents, and ward representatives will identify local priorities that feed into local government, state, and national plans to ensure alignment and sustainability. To realize these noble goals, subnational governments must play an active role. At the federal level, our commitment remains unshaken. We continue to strengthen coordination and ensure that all segments of the society are coming in tandem with our aspirations in terms of policy coherence and implementation across institutions. We therefore call on states to align with the renewed hope agenda in the collective pursuit of a future where every Nigerian can thrive. As we commence this summit, I wish to share with you that while our challenges are daunting, they are not insurmountable. Our ticket to achieving inclusive and lasting prosperity is our series of sound policies, strong partnerships, and the commitment of the private sector. This is why we must use this platform to develop actionable recommendations that will drive sustainable growth and strengthen our nation's resilience. The government is ready to receive and implement the recommendations that will emerge from your deliberations through the relevant ministries, departments, and agencies. My fellow Nigerians, we are not condemned to low growth, high costs, and low trust. We will stabilize, we will industrialize, we will humanize our economy. We will stabilize prices and currency, and we will industrialize through power, logistics, and technology. We will humanize governance so that every citizen feels respected and served. On this note, I want to dwell on something that is very dear, a topical issue that is very dear to the heart of every Nigerian. Aliko Dangote is not an individual, he's an institution. And he's the leading light in Nigeria's economic firmament. And how we treat this gentleman will determine how outsiders will judge us. If he had invested $10 billion in Microsoft, in Amazon, in Google. Probably he might be worth $70 to $80 billion by now. But he opted to invest in his country. And we owe it to future generations to jealously protect, promote, preserve, and project the interests of this great Nigeria. I wish to call for caution, retrospection, and a deeper sense of patriotism from both the labor and the organized private sector in defining and improving the relationship between labor and industry in the interest of maintaining our steadily improving economic fortunes. It's not about holding the whole nation to ransom because of a minor labor dispute. Nigeria is greater than Pengasan. Nigeria is greater than each and every one of us. I'm not coming to you as a partisan. I'm coming to you as a patriot in search of solutions to our national challenges. I wish to re-emphasize that in the interest of improving the fortunes, the government is hereby tasking the Nigerian Economic Summit Group in taking more than a passing interest in the matter. The government will expect far-reaching recommendations from the NESG in addressing this issue, even as the government is also taking steps to protect big industry and ensuring industrial harmony for the good of the nation. This is a refinery, Your Excellencies, Your Royal Highnesses, distinguished ladies and gentlemen, that was financed through a combination of equity investment, through debt finance, and loans from local and foreign banks. The refinery has to function to service the debt, and we cannot hold the whole nation to ransom for some issues that we can amicably settle across the table. Your Excellencies, ladies and gentlemen, this is off-the-cuff remarks, but I believe it reflects the true position of President Bola Ahmed Tinubu. It reflects the true position of the Nigerian people. On this note, we look forward to the fruitful deliberations of this important gathering, a gathering that has assembled the creme de la creme of the Nigerian business ecosystem. It's my singular honor and privilege, on behalf of President Bola Ahmed Tinubu, GCFR, to declare the 31st Nigerian Economic Summit open. Thank you, and God bless the Federal Republic of Nigeria.
Your Excellency, please remain on stage. Let me welcome the Governor of Nasarawa State and Deputy Governor Yobe to join us on stage. All the ministers that are here, Minister of State Finance, the Minister of State Industry, all over, please join us up here. Our Royal Father, the Chairman NESG, after the national anthem, His Excellency the Vice President will go out and inspect the exhibition booths outside. Cameraman, are you good? Okay, national anthem, please.
Nigeria, we hail thee, our own dear native land. Though tribe and tongue may differ, in brotherhood we stand.
Thank you very much. His Excellency the Vice President will be stepping out to inspect the exhibition stands. The rest of us, we can remain here. The media, please, we can play the video on the founding fathers. The founding fathers. I'd like to welcome and appreciate.
In the early 1990s, Nigeria stood at a defining crossroad.